So say you saw a very beautiful image and you are like, I really want to draw this. So you started drawing, you started with the mouth, but then it turned out to be something like this. Well, I get you. The struggle is indeed real. But what if I tell you that in just a few steps, you can transform this into that? Yes, in this video, I'll be showing you these steps plus a bonus tip, which will bring out a realistic version of your drawing. So with that said, let's jump right in.
So let's begin with something super simple, but surprisingly powerful. The horizontal line. Why? Because the horizontal line represents where the upper and lower lips meet. It's basically the meeting point for both sides. Next, you are going to mark the corners of the mouth along the horizontal line. These are tiny vertical ticks that shows where, right, the lips start and end. It might feel like, such a small step, but it has a huge impact on proportions. I then draw a vertical line, right, which intersects with the horizontal line. Now, this vertical line keeps everything centered, especially when you are drawing the mouth facing forward. You see, now when you're doing this, just make sure that you are not pressing hard, because this is your foundation, not your final work. So keep it super light so it doesn't show through the later process when we start adding shading and details. Next, I am working on what we call the Cupid bow. That's the little dip of, it has like an M shape at the center of the top tip. It's one of the most expressive parts of the mouth and gives the lips character and elegance. This is all done after I create that foundation to map that M shape. Now, while we are done with all this, we then complete the basic shape by building the lower lip. From one corner mark to the other, draw a wide shallow curve that dips just below the horizontal line. Now this forms the base of the bottom lip, which tends to be fuller and rounder, right, than the upper lip, like what you are seeing. Once you have connected both corners with that gentle U shape, take a moment to step back. You have just built a solid framework for realistic lips, and that's the hardest part for most people. So you know what? Give yourself some credit. Now, before we move on to shading, right, I would like to share with you a bonus tip. And this tip will be one of the most important tips which will define the lips you are drawing, and that is about adding texture. If you're enjoying this so far, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel. And drop a comment to let me know what facial features you want to cover next. And hey, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on what's coming next. With that said, let's jump into the bonus tip. So here's the thing. Real lips have texture. They are not just smooth skin. So to add, that layer of realism, we have to create some subtle texture lines. These aren't deep wrinkles or harsh lines. They are, very fine, almost invisible creases that run vertically across the lips, especially the lower ones. As you can see, I create curved motions that follow the lips' natural shape. You don't need many. In fact, less is more. But a few well-placed lines, some lighter, some darker, are enough to suggest the natural ridges without overworking the drawing. Remember, in order to prevent the lips from looking flat, those curves need to go according to how the lips is shaped. In addition, don't forget to add highlights. It really does make realism shine. Think of it like adding fingerprint details. is what makes your lips feel human, alive, and touchable. Okay, so now shading, my fun part of the drawing. I start by lightly shading the left side of the lower lip, right, as you can see over here. Once again, building around the texture that I did and making it once again go according to the flow of the lip with the curves. I then move on to the area where both the lips, the upper and the lower lips meet. It's mostly the darker part of the lip in the lower level. So that's what you can see as I darken that area a little bit. For now, I shift on to the upper left side of the lip, right, and started shading that area as well. As similar to what I did with the lower lip, I go by the flow, right, of the upper lip, how it goes. That's how I would draw my curves lightly and then darken it even further. If you have watched my previous tutorials on layering, you will realize that at the beginning you have to start with the lighter layer first, right, to serve as the foundation, and then you build over it. So similar to this drawing, that's what I'm applying. As you can see, the lighter shade was started, and then I am just building over it. At the moment, I'm still just darkening the area where both lips meet, but eventually I'm going to build over the lighter layer, darkening it even a little bit on the upper lip. Similarly, I do the same on the lower lip area. Now, at the place where the both lips meet, once again, I darken it even further. But then eventually, I shade the rest of the lips lightly, right? Where if it is the shadow is displaying even more, I darken it. But if not, I make sure that it is as light as possible to show that that was the area where the light is pointing. Now I move on to the right end of the lip, the upper right end, similar to what I did on the upper left end of the lip. I apply it on this part, creating the curve flow of the lip, and also bringing out the texture feel of the lip as well. Once I'm done with shading the upper right side of the lip, I just reshade the whole upper lip all over again, darkening it to give it a much more darker texture. Once I'm done with the upper lip, I move on to the lower lip. Now, unlike the upper lip, the lower lip most likely is lighter than the upper lip. The only parts whereby I darken it much more is where the shadows are displayed. But wherever there is highlights, I leave it as light as possible. Once again, don't forget, if you want to bring out the realism on your lips, right, you need to ensure that you are going by how curved the lip is. You're following that flow. If you don't do that, it will look flat and not realistic. Sometimes when shading the lip, you might feel like maybe your drawing of the lip, either the upper or lower lip, looks wider than it should be. Well, when it comes to such situations like this, don't be afraid to erase, right? Like what you see right here, I just erased that section to decrease the length of the lower lip. An additional thing to keep in mind is that always do your best to shade lightly so that erasing will be seamless. Okay, now that we have got the structure of the lips in place, right? Let's focus on what really makes this drawing pop out, which is the skin around the mouth. Now, this area is just as important as the lips themselves because it adds depth, right, and realism to your artwork. Firstly, I started by observing the natural shadow that form around the mouth. Then particularly right under the bottom lip, where there is shadow dip. And then I lightly shade this area using smooth controlled strokes, right, gradually building up the tone without pressing too hard. And you can see that I'm darkening it up a little bit. This gives the lips, right, that slight lift from the surface of the skin, making them appear three-dimensional. With these subtle details, you'll notice the mouth seems to pop off the page, almost like it's alive. And there you have it, a realistic implementation of the mouth. Give yourself a pat on your back if you have made it this far. All right, so let's do a quick recap of what we've covered so far. So firstly, I drew the horizontal line. Then I marked the corners of that line. Thirdly, I drew the vertical line centered in between, right, both marked corners. Based on how the mouth looks, you can you can choose which point you want the intersection to be at. Fourthly, I build the M shape by measuring the distance from the corner points. This is done for the upper lip. For the lower lip, I made a curve which forms the base of the bottom lip. Bear in mind, I could measure how open or closed the lower lip will be based on the marks I make on the vertical line. In addition, I also added well-placed curved lines following the flow of the lip, some lighter and some darker, which are enough to suggest once again the natural ridges without overworking the drawing. With that, I also added, traces where the highlights will be displayed. This will just prompt me where I should draw lighter from the darker areas. After that, I just left it to shading, following the flow of the lips. In addition, I also shaded around the lips, the skin around the lips, just to pop out the mouth much more and bring out its realism. And just like that, you've drawn a realistic mouth using simple steps, a structured approach, and a little patience. You see, this might seem like a lot at first, but take a step back and really look at what you have created. You didn't just draw a mouth, you built it layer by layer. And if you made it through to this point, you've already won. If this video helped you, go ahead and give it a like. It tells this algorithm and me that this kind of content help artists like you. And please don't forget to subscribe and comment below what feature you would love to see next. I am already planning videos for eyes, nose, ears, and more, so your input will help shape what comes next. Thanks for watching, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next one.